If I remember correctly, we should be still in Sir Gawain of the Green Knight, early in Sir Gawain of the Green Knight, around line 130. And I know we're behind. More than likely what we're going to end up doing is dropping Mallory. We'll just kind of wait and see what happens. So if you would, open your books to page 263. This is Fit 1, line 130. We've seen the introduction to King Arthur and the court. They're at Camelot. And we've heard that it's Arthur's practice to never eat until, 1, everybody else has been served, and 2, he either hears a marvelous tale or sees a marvelous work, or a marvel, let's say. Okay? So, picking up around line 130, we find out, the course has been properly served, and all of a sudden there bursts in at the hall door a terrible figure. In his stature, the very tallest on earth. From the waist to the neck, so thick set and square, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And he's entirely in green. 151. All arrayed in green, this man and his clothes. The straight, close-fitting cloak clung to his body, a pleasant mantle over that, and everything is green. Keep in mind. Turn to the next page. Long description of the knight and everything he's wearing. Why? Why spend so much time on the accoutrements of the knight and his horse? What might the descriptions of the knight tell us about the audience? Any guesses? They don't have good imaginations? Possible. They were women? Possible. I think there are definitely women in the audience. What else?
What they cared about.
Keep going, Jason.
Just what are their priorities and what they, how they judge people.
Okay. They would have liked this kind of description, this kind of level of detail. Why? They're probably in the same class. That is, the audience, the intended audience for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, most scholars believe is a royal or courtly or aristocratic audience. In other words, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was not written for peasants. Okay? Because peasants wouldn't have understood a lot of this level of detail. Because they wouldn't have come in contact with it. Okay? But a courtly or aristocratic audience would understand exactly what is being described and what is being discussed. And they would have said, oh, yeah, well, back home I've got, same kind of thing. It's not green, but, right? I mean, for example, look at 165 and following. It would be hard to describe even half the fine work that was embroidered upon it. The butterflies and birds with lovely beadwork of green, always centered upon gold. The pendants on the breast trappings, the splendid crupper, the bosses on the bit, and all the metal enameled. Only someone who is pretty involved in horsework, equestrianship, okay, is going to get a lot of those references. Okay? We find out he's got a big beard and all this kind of stuff. Turn over to page 65, 265, beginning, hopefully these are the same line numbers, at line 224. So the knight comes in, we're given this big long description. Notice from when he comes in at line 136, he doesn't speak until line 224. Everything between 136 and 224 is description of the knight. Right? Pretty detailed. In 224, he finally speaks. Now keep in mind, he's on his horse still. Okay? He's ridden into the hall. He goes up to the high table, which is literally a high table. It's higher than all the others, right? And he rides right up to Arthur. Now, one thing you have to understand is in medieval literature, and kind of in the medieval popular mindset, a king ought to be readily recognizable. That is, you walk into a room and you immediately ought to be able to recognize the king. You ought to be able to pick him out of 100 people easily. Right? And in fact, in some medieval literature, we see is that there's a mark on the king. Often, it's a light. Not, like hit the spotlight. But there is a light coming from him. In one work of medieval romance, and I'm trying to remember which one. It's either King Horn or Havelock the Dane. The young future king, he's not yet king because he's kind of been deposed before he even became king, is asleep at night and he has his mouth open and there's a light shining from his mouth. Okay? So the Green Knight comes in, he rides kind of up and down the high, says, "Where is the governor of this crowd?" Okay. That's a slap at Arthur. He is saying, "You can't be the king. You're not the king. Who's the king here? Glad should I be to clap eyes on the man and exchange with him a few words." He's down at the knights as he rides up and down. And Arthur is probably already starting to get a little bit uncomfortable. He paused, waiting to see who had the most renown. Knight, horse, green as grass, etc. And then, line 250, Arthur confronts that wonder before the high table, salutes him, and says, "Welcome indeed. I am master of this house. My name is Arthur. Sit, spend some time, eat. No, by heaven and him who sits there." Okay? So what does the Green Knight do? He swears by God. Okay? Not what you would expect a demon, a devil to do, which is what some people kind of, that is within the poem. "To spend time in this house was not the cause of my coming, but because your name, sir, is so highly regarded. Your city and your warriors reputed the best, dauntless in armor and on horseback afield, the most valiant and excellent of all living men, players in other noble sports like jousting and tournaments." All right? "And here courtesy is displayed, as I have heard tell, and that has brought me here truly on this day." Notice what he keeps emphasizing. I've heard, it is said, your reputation. All of that is essentially what? If you were try to admit this evidence in a court of law, it'd be hearsay. I've heard. That's not proof. Your reputation can precede, and it can be false. Okay? So, what's he there for? Well, "You may be assured by this branch that I carry that I approach you in peace, seeking no battle." What branch is he carrying? Holly branch. Okay? "For had I traveled in fighting dress, in warlike manner, I have a hauberk at home and a helmet too, a shield, a keen, other weapons to brandish, but I don't look for any combat." No. And he says, "I'm not dressed for battle. But if you're as courageous as everyone says, you'll graciously grant me the game that I asked for by right. That is, let's play a game. It's not going to be... It's going to be, as I put up the other day, the beheading game. Okay? Well, if you want to combat without armor, you will not lack a fight. That is, if you want to fight, okay. No. I see. Okay, what does this tell us about Arthur? word that the Green Knight has said? The Green Knight has said, I don't want to fight. If I wanted to fight, I would have brought weapons. Real weapons. No, I seek no battle. Those about me in this hall are but beardless children. What does that mean? You guys are beneath, you're mere boys. He's saying, I am a man who has fought many battles. You guys are not even pages. Okay, if you understand the progression, you go from page to squire to knight. Pages can start, anywhere about 7 years old and go to 11 to 12. Squires would be 11 to 12 to really anywhere up there, 18 to 20. A pretty young knight would be 20 years old. Okay? He's saying, you guys aren't even yet fit to shovel out my horse's stall. No one here could match me with their feeble words. What is this court reputed to be? The best in the world. The best in the world. The height, he says, of chivalry and courtesy and warlike manners. And what's he doing? He is, to use another medieval term, throwing down the gauntlet at them. Okay? He's slapping them across the face. So he says, no, I'm not here to fight. But I want to have a Christmas game. For it is Yule and New Year, and here are brave men in plenty. If anyone in this hall thinks himself bold enough, so doughty in body and reckless in mind, what does that word reckless literally mean? Not thinking. That word of reckon, I reckon so, I think so, I consider so. Right? So he says, so doughty in body, reckless in mind, is to strike a blow fearlessly and take one in return. I shall give him this marvelous battle axe as a gift. Okay? Notice, you take the first swing, I'll take the second, and you get to keep the axe. If anyone is fierce enough to take up my challenge, run to me quickly and seize this weapon. I renounce all claim to it. But in 12 months and a day, you have to take the return stroke. If he petrified them at first, line 301, even stiller were then all the courtiers in that place, the great and the small. They hear this, and there's nothing. What? Is this Arthur's house? I mean, who's there? Sir Gawain, Bors, Bedivere, Lancelot. Lancelot in the literature never is a challenge. I mean, you tell him his horse looks funny, he's going to lop your head off. That everyone talks of kingdoms. Where are now your arrogance and your victories, your fierceness and wrath, and your great speeches? Now the revelry and repute of the Round Table are overthrown with a word. A single word, he says, from mouth is enough to overthrow all of your what? All of your reputation. Come on. Somebody hit me. Play the game. And so Arthur finally says, but what you demand is absurd. Since you've asked for folly, okay, I'll take you one. So Arthur rises up, and then Sir Gawain sitting over. You almost get this image of Sir Gawain, he's sitting on the high chair, the chair that's higher than all the others because he's so small, and he's saying, ooh, Uncle Artie, can I? I beg you in plain words to let this task be mine. If you would, noble lord, bid me rise from my seat and stand at your side. Notice, he has to ask the king. If without discourtesy I might leave the table and that my liege lady were not displeased. Notice what he's concerned about. if I might discourtesy leave your table. Courteous in all things. To leave the table, to get next to the queen, to get up and leave the table without the host's permission would be discourteous. In modern terms, he is saying, may I be excused? Okay? But he has a reason. For it seems to me unfitting, if the truth be admitted, when so arrogant a request is put forward in hall, desirous to undertake it yourself, while so many brave men sit about you in their places, who I think are unrivaled in temper of mind. What Gawain is saying is, most noble king, let another one of your knights do this. This is beneath. Notice none of the other knights are speaking, however. None of them are clamoring for the opportunity. They're all I kind of imagine eyes cast down because they don't want to look at the Green Knight. All right? So he says, without equal as warriors on field, I am the weakest of them I know, and the dullest minded. What is he saying? What's he showing? Humility. Humility. So my death would be least loss if truth should be told. Now, what were we told about Sir Gawain in Lawnval? Anybody remember? Go back to it for just a moment. We were told, let's see, there's the maiden, Feast of St. John. Page 194 at the top, right-hand column. Gawain, the noble, the valiant, who made himself so beloved by everyone, said, by God, my lords, we've done wrong not to have brought along Lawnval with us, etc. Okay? So he says, my death would be the least loss if truth should be told. Only because you, uncle, am I to be praised. That is only because a little bit of your blood flows through my veins. No virtue I know in myself but your blood. Virtue there means power. I am worthless except that I'm related to you. And since this affair is so foolish and unfitting for you, and I have asked you for it first, it should fall to me. Okay? Nobles whisper together, go get him, Sir Gawain. And Arthur agrees. So the king commands Sir Gawain to stand up, and he does. And the king says, take care, nephew, that you strike one blow and you deal it rightly. Truly, I believe you will wait a long time for his stroke to turn. In other words, if you strike him correctly, this is like litotes, you'll wait a long time for that stroke and return. How long? Forever. You cut his head off, and he won't get back up. What's the problem with that logic? What's the Green Knight look like? Green. Is green a natural color on a human being?
God.
Pardon?
The vegetation god?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Green Man in British popular mythology. Okay? You can't go to a church in Britain today. Well, take that back. You can't go to an old in Britain today and not have the Green Man represented somewhere. Green Man, you know, you got his eyes, you got a nose, you got a mouth, and then you have leaves all around him and twigs. And the image is extremely old. I mean, it shows up in some early medieval literature, but you see this in stonework everywhere, all right? So the knight says, all right, before you take your stroke, let's agree on our terms. That is, the lawyer part of him comes out. Let's repeat our agreement before going further. What's your name? And you're going to tell me so that I can believe you. I'm called Gawain, who deals you this blow, whatever happens after. And on this day next year, I'll accept from you, with what you choose, a return blow and from no other person on earth. I goes, okay, that sounds good. My God, sir, I am pleased. In other words, it's almost like he's going, the very one I had hoped for. That I shall get from your hands what I've asked for here, line 390. You've repeated fully, exact terms, the covenant I put to the king, except you shall assure me on your word, that is, on your honor, that you will seek me yourself wherever you think I may be found upon earth, to accept such payment as you deal me today before this noble gathering. And so Sir Gawain says, where? What's your address? I don't know where you live, nor do I know you, nor your court, nor your name. Tell me these things, and what you're called, and I shall use all my wits to get myself there. And so the Green Knight says, no, that can wait. Just hold on. And Sir Gawain's thinking, well, okay, if I don't know who he is and where he comes from, and I chop his head off, then I don't. If I answer you truly after taking the blow, and you have dexterously struck me, I will tell you at once of my house, my home, and my proper name. Okay. Take your shot, and if I can talk afterwards, then you still have to agreement. All right? And Sir Gawain says, okay. And he wets the metal bit. Does this along the edge. Makes that edge shine. The Green Knight takes up his position. That is, he comes in front where everybody can see him, leans over like this, pulls his collar back because he doesn't want to rip the shirt, pulls his collar back to give a nice bit of skin there. His lovely long hair, he swept over his head, doesn't want to get a haircut either, so he pulls that over. And Gawain grasps the axe and lifts it high. He sets his left foot before him on the ground. Why? Setting his left foot tells us Sir Gawain is right-handed. Okay? He's going to take that axe like he's chopping wood. And he brings it back here. And how big is the axe? If I remember right, we're told the blade, it's a rounded blade. The blade is 4 feet from point to point, which is about that big. This is a stinking big axe, okay? Probably weighs 60, 70 pounds. Most axes you use today to chop wood are 2 to 5 pounds. Okay, so this is a heavy axe. So Sir Gawain gets it. He plants his foot here because he's going to bring all of his body weight down on that when he swings. And how hard does he swing the axe? Well, we're told he brought it down swiftly on the bare flesh so that the bright blade slashed through the man's spine, cut through the white flesh, severing it in two, and the shining steel blade bit into the floor. Well, what's the floor made out of? Stone. So it bang, and sticks. I mean, he really swung. He was going for a grand slam with this baby. The handsome head flew from the neck to the ground, and many courtiers kicked it as it rolled past. It's the invention of soccer. The head's being kicked around under the table. Blood sitting there, think Monty Python, the Black Knight, splurting out of his neck. But there's a problem that Sir Gawain probably immediately realizes. The body doesn't fall to the ground. It's still standing there. And then it springs forward and fiercely reaches out where the knights were standing and grabs its head. I don't know if it's, feeling around for it. Grabs the head, picks it up by the hair, gets to the horse, jumps up on its horse, holding the head, and the head speaks. See, Sir Gawain, that line 448, that you carry out your promise exactly and search for me truly until I am found. As you have sworn in this hall in the hearing of the make your way to the Green Chapel. It's not a very good address. I charge you to get such a blow as you have dealt rightfully given to be readily returned on New Year's Day. As the Knight of the Green Chapel, I am widely known. Well, because none of them have heard of him. So if you make search to find me, you cannot possibly fail. In other words, if you don't find me, it's because you weren't looking. If you do look for me, you will find me. Therefore come or merit the name of craven coward. Turns his horse out. And what are we told? The king and Gawain grin. They both agreed on a wonder scene. In other words, let's eat. This is what Arthur wanted. He wanted either a wonderful tale or he wanted to see a marvel. You don't see this kind of marvel every day. A big guy gets his head lopped off. He hops back on his horse and rides off into the sunset. So, Arthur tells Guinevere, "Dear lady, let nothing distress you today. Such strange are fitting at Christmas." Really? Not at my house, they're not. Putting on interludes, laughing and singing. But, he says, now I can go to my food, for I've witnessed a marvel I cannot deny. He glances at Sir Gawain and says, hang up the axe and dig in. What do you think's going through Sir Gawain's mind? Yeah. Oh, shit. Oops. Struck dead. So we come to part 2. So we get the setting with the beheading game. Okay? So fit 2, what happens? The end of the New Year's Revelry goes by. Lent goes by. Period of spiritual transformation and everything. Late spring, summer goes by. Line 536. All Saints' Day arrives. Which is when? November 1st. Okay? It's the day after Halloween. All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Day. All right? November 1st. And Sir Gawain says, it's time for me to go. I don't know where this Green Chapel is. So I better start looking because he has 2 months to get there. All right? So what do? They get him ready. Big, long descriptions, okay, of the armor he will be given, the accoutrements he will be given, and the sending off he receives. Look at top of page 274, where we hear some of the knights. Ewain and Eric, Dodno le Sauvage, Clarence, Lancelot, Lionel, Lucan the Good, Bors and Bedivere, okay, Mato de la Porte, all these other knights. And he stays there that day and all the next, calls for his accoutrement, and what are we told? I mean, look at the stuff that we have described, line 570 and following. I won't go through all of it, but the brave knight steps on it. What's the it? What are they? The red carpet, right? So he steps on it, examines his armor, dressed in a costly doublet of silk, under a weapon fastened at the top, his cape, okay, trimmed with white ermine on the inside. Then they fit metal shoes on his feet, clasp his legs in steel with elegant greaves, knee pieces attached to them, highly polished, fastened to his knees with knots of gold. Right? Fine cuisses that neatly enclose his thick muscular thighs with thongs attached. That is, the thongs are on the back. This is all armor, so that he's kind of like Iron Man in the 14th century. From toe to head in metal armor. All right? And even his horse gets new armor. You find his horse named. All His name's Gringolet. 590. Yeah, 597. By then, Gringolet was ready, fitted with a saddle, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then they bring out his shield, line 619. And it has a pentangle painted on it in pure gold. A pentangle. Okay. It's a 5-pointed star. It's not a pentagram. What's the difference between a pentangle and a pentagram? Turn it upside down. This point is on the bottom. We're going to get big description about what is on this shield, or let me rephrase it. What this represents. Okay? It's got the pentangle, and we're told why. I'm going to explain that. It's a symbol that Solomon designed long ago as an emblem of fidelity and justice, for it is a figure consisting of 5 points. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 4, 5 points. And what are each of the points representative of? It's a figure consisting of 5 points where each line overlaps into another, and the whole design is continuous. And in England is called, I am told, so this is a pentangle, is called the endless knot. Why? Because you can't tell where it begins and ends. Therefore it suits this knight and his shining arms, for always faithful in 5 ways and 5 times in each case. Gawain was reputed as virtuous, like refined gold, devoid of all vice, all courtly virtues adorned. So, what are we finding out about Sir Gawain? He's essentially the model perfection when it comes to a knight. All right? So, we're told in each of these 5 points there are 5 elements. So, first, he's judged perfect in his 5 senses. Touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Next, his 5 fingers never lost their dexterity. I'll say 5 good. Okay? And all his earthly faith was in the 5 wounds. As the creed declares. And wherever he found himself in battle, his fixed thought was that above all things, all his fortitude should come from the 5 joys from Mary. That's a good point. And here, for example, is where I think you ought to have a footnote. Because modern audiences have no idea what the 5 joys of Mary are. What are the 5 joys of Mary? Anybody know? Annunciation. Gabriel visits her. Blessed are you among women. Okay. 2. Incarnation. 3. I'm going to miss one. Crucifixion. 4. Resurrection. 5. Ascension. Okay? Where was I? The 5 joys of Mary that Kumail and her child. For this reason, the gracious knight had her image depicted on the inside of his shield. So on the outside, he's got this, and on the inside, the Virgin Mary. Okay? The 5th group of 5, this one down the man of 5, the man respected, I hear, was, I'm going to move it over here. It's got its 5s. So we have generosity, love of fellow, generosity, love above all, purity and courtesy, were never lacking, and surpassing the others, compassion. Right? So these are what each of these points represent. He's perfect in his 5 senses. Yes?
What if, at number 5, it's called the 5 what?
This one,
Yes, sir.
it doesn't actually tell us.
Okay.
No. No, I mean, there's not a term for it. The 5, you call these the 5 chivalric virtues, I guess. I'll make one up. Generosity. What have we already seen, in terms of Anglo-Saxon kingship? That's a sign of royalty. Love of fellow men, that's kind of the good idea, right? Purity, cleanness of heart and such. Courtesy, we've already talked about how important that is in the courtly love and chivalry. And notice we're told compassion overtops all of these. Well, what does compassion mean? It doesn't mean love of somebody else. It means suffering with. The co means with, passion, suffering. That is suffering with someone. Empathy, we would say. Okay? So he's perfect in his 5 senses. He's perfect in his manual dexterity. In other words, this means he's good with a sword, or spear, or hammer, or mace, or not throttling somebody. Okay? His joys, or he places faith in the 5 wounds of Christ. He trusts in the 5 joys of Mary. What does that mean? This is getting all to the heart of his faith. The Annunciation, the Incarnation, the Crucifixion, the Resurrection, and the Ascension. You can call them the 5 uns, I guess. And then the 5 virtues, if you want. All right? And so we're told, these noble 5, these, were more deeply implanted in that man than any other. Now, I don't think that line is talking about these. I think it's talking about these 5. That Sir Gawain is more perfect in these than anybody else. That includes Arthur. Right? Now, truly, all these 5 groups were embodied in the knight. Embodied, incarnated. To the others in an endless design based upon the 5 points that was never unfinished. Not uniting in one line or separating another, blah, 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 blah. So, what does he do? We get the description of the horse. We get the description of Sir Gawain and all of his glorious armor. We get the description of his shield, okay, which has this on the outside and Mary on the inside. He gets on his horse and rides off into the sunset. And what are we told? Line 691. He rides through the realm of England, though he found it no pleasure. Often friendless and alone, what happens? He rides and he rides and he rides and he rides. And he makes his way to Holyhead, which we're told is in the wilderness of Wirral, which, if you turn to the map on the back of your book, is up here. Wait, make sure I'm in the right place. Yeah, It's up in this area right here. Northern Wales, northeastern Wales, where northeastern Wales meets England. In other words, very close to the city of Chester, where Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was probably written. So he makes his way up there, opposite Anglesey, which are on the left. That's if you look at that map again. Is this big island right here. It's where Will and Kate have a cottage, in case you're... Because that's where his unit, his rescue helicopter detail is. And told few people live there whom either God or good-hearted men could love. But every time he meets somebody, he asks, have you heard of the Green Knight? Do you know where the Green Chapel is? Nobody knows. And he keeps on going because he's supposed to be looking. And what are we told? He sees dragons and wolves. He fights with line 721, wild, okay, who dwelt among the crags. He fights with bulls and bears and boars and ogres. And it's just a generally and not nice time for Sir Gawain. It's the middle of winter, not literally, it's kind of more the beginning of winter, by the time he gets to where he's going. And we're told, line 7, half dead with the cold, Gawain slept in his armor, more nights than enough among the bare rocks. Where splashing from the hilltops, the freezing stream runs, hung over his head in hard icicles. Thus in danger, hardship, and continual pain, this knight rides across the land until Christmas Eve alone. He sets out on the 2nd of November. It's now December 24th. Okay? And earnestly Gawain prays to Mary that she send him guidance to some place where he might lodging find. Over a hill in the morning he rides. Okay, so it was Christmas Eve, and now the morning comes. Or the morning that he comes is Christmas Eve. It's not exactly clear. But he goes into a dense forest, high slopes, woods at their base, moss hanging down. Okay. He's going under the trees. In line 750, we're told that he was troubled about his plight, lest he should be unable to attend Mass for that Lord who on that same night was born of a maiden, our suffering to end. He's thinking, I need to get to church. He's out in the middle of nowhere. So he prays, I beg of you, Lord, and Mary, who is gentlest mother so dear, for some lodging where I might devoutly hear Mass and your remains and your matins tomorrow. Okay? The night now is Christmas Eve. The morning tomorrow is Christmas morning, and he wants to hear matins in the morning. Morning prayers, in other words. And he says, and to this end I promptly repeat my Pater and Ave and Creed. He's going to repeat his Pater Noster, the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven. He's going to recite his Ave Maria, Hail Mary, full of grace, and he's going to recite the Apostles' Creed, or the Nicene Creed. All right? And he bewails his misdeeds. That is, he's sorry for his sins. And praying as he rode, he crosses him, crying, prosper me, Christ's cross. That is another word that is sometimes used, using this tense intentionally. Throve me. Past tense of thrive. If you thrive, what are you doing? You're succeeding. You're doing very well. If your business thrives, it's growing. Okay? Today we say thrived. We don't say throve. Okay? It has changed part of speech, essentially. So hardly had he crossed himself 3 times, and what's he see? Suddenly, in the midst of this heavily wooded forest, a castle. And I mean that literally. It's like it just appears out of nowhere. Standing over a field on a mound surrounded by boughs. It's not just a castle. It's like a garden. Okay? He's looking, and he sees through the trees, and what does he see? He sees a field, and on the field he sees a mound, and on the mound he sees a big castle, some church up there, all that stuff. And around the castle, trees. This is a garden image, okay? And so he rides up, knocks on the door. He thanks, line 773, Jesus et Saint Julian. Why Saint Julian? A patron saint of hospitality, okay? Who kindly are both, who treated him courteously, listened to his prayer. And so they go, and they're welcomed into the hall. And Sir Gawain speaks to the porter, and asks to spend the night. And the porter says, by St. Peter, you're welcome. Come on in, stay as long as you want. It's kind of like, Motel 6. The light on for you. And Sir Gawain goes in. And he meets the Lord of the company, line 33. The Lord of the company comes down from his chamber to show his respect by meeting Sir Gawain there. And he says, you're welcome to do as you please with everything here. Okay? All is yours to have and command you wish. He is showing proper hospitality. He's welcomed somebody in from the cold, and he says, everything in my house is yours. What does everything mean? Yeah, his wife, his ladies in waiting, his, you want, everything. All right? Sir Gawain says, thanks indeed. Christ repay your noblesse. Your noblessa. What's noblessa? Your noble bearing, your nobleness, your breeding, all that kind of stuff. Okay? And he notices, this guy's huge. A size knight indeed, we're told, line 844, in the prime of life. Broad and glossy was his beard, reddish brown, stern face. He stands firmly on powerful legs, with a face fierce as fire, noble in speech, etc. And Gawain's looking around, curtains of silk inside this castle. Why do castles have curtains on the walls? Pardon? Cold. The walls are drafty. That is, castle walls aren't like this, where you have perfectly applied mortar between all the brick. Some castles, you could see through the brick. So you can see daylight outside, right? Wind, be extremely cold. So they pull up a chair before the fireplace and stuff, and they talk and drink. And we're told, line 901, Sir Gawain was tactfully questioned and asked by discreet inquiry, addressed to that prince, so that he must politely admit he belonged to the court which noble Arthur, that gracious man, rules alone. In other words, the lord of the castle doesn't just come out and say, who are you? Where are you from? Show me your papers. No, they talk. He pours wine and discreetly finds out that Sir Gawain is from Camelot and that he is indeed Sir Gawain himself. So, when the lord of the castle heard who was his guest, loudly at the news, bottom of 282. So deeply was he pleased. And what happens? Word spreads throughout the castle. All the men in the castle were overjoyed. Why? Because, we're told, of the man to whom excellence and valor belongs, whose refined manners are everywhere praised, and whose fame exceeds any other person's on earth. And they whisper to each other, now we shall enjoy seeing displays of good manners. Because out here where we live, we don't know no good manners. It's kind of wild. We're just way out here in the sticks. We're just a bunch of dumb hicks. Now we're going to learn how them royals at Camelot, how they really speak good. They speak good English, you know. That's what's being told, right? We shall enjoy of good manners and the irreproachable terms of noble speech. Proper speaking. The art of conversation we can learn, notice, unasked. We can just witness and then what Sir Gawain does. Okay? Since we have taken in the source of good breeding, the source of good breeding, not the result of good breeding. Truly, God's been gracious to us indeed. Okay? To us, Sir Gawain, whose birth men will happily sit down and celebrate in song. What day is it? It's Christmas. Whose birth should they be thinking / talking about? Christ. In knowledge of fine manners, this man has peace. I think that those who hear him will learn what love talk is. In other words, how to woo women. We're going to get a crash course, an intensive study in romance. Okay? Gawain gets up from dinner. The Lord takes him by the sleeve, leads him to a seat, calls him by name. Lady, we're told, line 941, wished to set eyes on the knight. And she left her pew with many fair women. And we're told she was the loveliest on earth in complexion and features. Notice, she's not the loveliest on earth, except for Guinevere. Okay? Loveliest on earth in complexion and features, in figure, in coloring, and behavior above all. So she's the full deal. She's got everything. And more beautiful than Guinevere, it seemed to the knight. Okay. Whenever that happens in medieval literature, you know you're in trouble. Okay? Chancelled to meet him, and another lady's leading her by the left hand. Notice, the beautiful, drop-dead, gorgeous woman is by the unbeautiful, undrop-dead, gorgeous woman by the left hand. Why the left hand? Anybody know Latin? What's Latin for left? Our spelling. Sinister. Sinistra. What does sinister mean today? It doesn't mean left. Bad, evil, not good, unholy. Okay? So let's talk about this woman leading her by the left hand, who was older than she, an aged one it seemed, and respectfully treated by the assembled knights. We find out much later on why they treat her respectfully. You don't cross Morgan Le Fay. You don't say anything to Morgan Le Fay. Right? That's who the old lady is. But very different in looks were those two ladies. For where the young one was fresh, she was withered. So, fresh, withered. Like roses. Beautiful, buds opening, and petals dropping. Okay? Every part of that was rosily aglow. You've all seen a woman aglow, where they just kind of glow. Like life is pouring forth. That's the beautiful one. On that other, rough, wrinkled cheeks hung in folds. Folds. Not, notice, one fold. It's multiple folds. Okay? Many bright pearls adorned the crown of one, whose breast and white throat, uncovered and bare. Doesn't mean she's walking around topless. It does mean she probably has a low cut. Okay? Shone more dazzling than snow new fallen on hills. Her skin is dazzling white. The other wore a gorget over her neck. That's covering. Her swarthy chin. What's swarthy mean? Dark. So why is her chin dark? Don't stretch. It's not that hard. She's hairy. She has a beard. Okay? Scary. Her swarthy chin wrapped in chalk white veils, her forehead enfolded in silk, muffled up everywhere, with embroideries and lattice work of tiny stitching, so that nothing was exposed of her but her black brows. Okay, now let me back up for a minute. The swarthy on her chin may not be because she has a beard. It could also be just because of her skin color, okay? Which could just be dark, not necessarily black. Morgan Le Fay is not English. Some Welsh have darker skin color than English do. Okay? So that nothing's exposed of her but her black brows. Her black brows might be the giveaway for that. Her two nose, her naked lips, which were repulsive to see and shockingly bleared. I have no idea what that means. But her lips are bleared. I understand bleary eyes. But bleary lips? Colorless? I mean, most people's lips have a little bit of pink to them. So, white? Ugh, like a corpse almost. Which were repulsive to see, shockingly bleared. A noble lady indeed, you might call her, by God. With body squat and thick. What does that mean, squat? And thick. Short and wide. Okay? And buttocks bulging broad. Notice the poet emphasizes that. Okay? More acceptable in looks was the lady whom she led. So our poet's kind of got the hots for the beauty on the right, kind of repulsed by the one on the left.
Of course, it's not saying much by saying that the one is prettier than the other.
Probably the trees. Gawain glanced at that beauty, who favored him with a look. Taking leave of the Lord, he walked towards them. The older one, he was with a deep bow. So he sees the older, squat, fat, broad-buttocked one, bows to her, sign of reverence. Takes the lovelier one briefly into his arms. He bows to the one and plants one on the other one. Okay? Kisses her respectfully and courteously speaks. They ask to make his acquaintance, and he quickly begs, truly to be their servant. Chivalry. He is swearing vassalage to them. When he says, I will be your servant, he is saying, you are now my Lord. You are my mistress. Not one I'm going to sleep with. Hopefully not the ugly one. Maybe the other one. Okay? But he means, you are my master. You give me a command, I will do it. All right? Which is also part and parcel of the courtly love tradition. They place him between them and lead him, still chatting, to a private. They sit next to the fireplace. They call for spiced cakes and such. The Lord jumps up, graciously pulls off his hood, hangs it on a spear, and they talk. And I'm going to skip a bunch. Sir Gawain and the lovely lady are looking at each other. They're making eyes to each other. They're flirting a lot. Right? Great joy filled that day and the one following, we're told. And pick up with line 1035. Gawain's getting ready for bed, bids goodbye to the host, and the host says, "Indeed, sir, as long as I live, I shall be the better, because Gawain was my guest at God's own feast," that is, at God's feast. "All my thanks, sir," says Sir Gawain. "In truth, it is yours, so all the honor falls to you, and may the High King repay you. I'm at your command to act on your bidding, that is, you, while I'm in your castle, I'm under your command. Okay? I'm duty bound to an every small by right." And the Lord says, "Okay, stay with me. Stay here." And Sir Gawain says, "I'm on my way to the Green Chapel. I've got to meet the Green Knight on New Year's." And the Lord says, "Don't worry about it. I'll tell you how to get to the Green Chapel. You can leave the same day and you'll still arrive in time. It's not 2 miles away." And Sir Gawain's thinking, perfect. Okay? So the knight says, after Sir Gawain says some things, the knight says, "You've agreed to carry out whatever deed I ask." Line 1089. "Will you keep this promise?" Okay. At this very instant, you've agreed before. You said, "Oh, now let's make it official." "Yes, assuredly. While I'm under your roof, I will obey your bidding." "Okay, well, you're tired now. We're going to think about this for a little bit. Let's make an agreement. Whatever I catch in the wood," line 1106, "whatever I catch shall become yours. And whatever mishap, that is, by chance, comes your way, give me in exchange. Swap, swear me that truly. Whatever falls to our lot, worthless or better." Sir Gawain, "I like this idea. I agree. Let's drink on this." So what happens? They kiss each other affectionately. I mean, they're European after all. Enter their respective rooms. So we get part 3. So what do we have? We have the beheading game. So we've just been introduced to what other element? The exchange of winnings. Okay? They've agreed. Whatever the knight gets in the morning when he goes off and hunts, he'll give to Sir Gawain. Whatever Sir Gawain gets staying around at the castle, he'll give to the knight. Okay? And we jump to now part 3. And we find out early in the morning the knight takes his men and they go off and they go out hunting. We're going to see this happen in 3 days. They go off hunting, and what are they hunting first day? Deer. Okay. And we get to line 1178. "Thus this nobleman sports along the edges of woods. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Sir Gawain lies safely in bed, while the daylight gleamed on the walls. And as he lazily dozed, he heard slyly made a little noise at his door, and his door opens. He gets up kind of on his elbows, like, what the? Lifts the corner of the curtain, because he's in a 4-poster bed, with curtains all the way around it, to help seal out the cold. And he kind of pulls the curtain back a little bit, and he sees the door open, and the lady come in. looking her loveliest. She shuts behind her. She comes towards the bed. The knight's confused. Really. Tells us maybe how virtuous Sir Gawain is. He doesn't have a clue what's about to happen. Okay? So he lays down and pretends to sleep. She approaches. She lifts the curtain. She comes inside. She closes the curtain. And she sits on the bed. And the knight shammed asleep for a very long while. It seemed an astonishing thing, but he tells himself, maybe it would be what she wants. So he wakes and stretches. And he pretends surprise. He crosses himself. Okay? Protecting himself by prayer with this sign. With lovely chin and cheek of blended color both, charmingly she spoke. Small laughing mouth. Good morning, Sir Gawain, she says. You're an unwary sleeper that one can steal in here. Now are you caught in a moment unless we agree on a truce. I shall imprison you in your bed. Yeah, and Freud would probably just completely crazy with that language. Imprison you in your bed. Well, how does she imprison him? She reaches across and pins him. His arms are, kind of like this, and she pins him. Laughing merrily, the lady uttered this jest, and the knight laughed back. Good morning. You shall do with me as you wish, and that please me much. I surrender at once and beg for your mercy. Okay, why does he say you shall do with me as you wish? He already swore that she will be his lord or mistress. Okay? And he says, and what you shall do with me, that pleases me much. Okay? For I surrender at once and beg for your mercy. So he jokes in return, notice. But if, lovely lady, you grant me leave and release your captive and ask him to rise, I'd like to get up and get dressed, please. No, indeed, not. She says, you shall not leave your bed. I intend something better. I shall tuck you in here on both sides of the bed, and then chat with my knight whom I have captured. For I know well in truth that you are Sir Gawain, whom everyone knows wherever you go. Your good name, your courtesy, your manners, they all precede you, she says. And, golly gee, look where we are. Now indeed, you are here, and we two quite alone. My husband and his men have gone far away. The other servants are in bed, my women too, the door shut, locked with a powerful hasp. And since I have under my roof the man everyone loves, I shall spend my time well while it lasts with talk. Talk! You're welcome to me indeed. What does that mean? You are welcome to me. I'm yours. Okay? Take whatever you want. Circumstances force me to be your true servant. Circumstances. I don't know how, but I'm up here. I'm in your room. I'm in your bed. Your door is locked. What can I say? And Sir Gawain, I'm greatly honored, but, you think that's Sir Gawain? No. That's Sir Gawain the Greater. I'm Sir Gawain the one nobody knows. I'm not. Silly you. He says, if the excellence and gallantry everyone admires, I were to slight or disparage, that would hardly be courteous. This is the lady replying to him. But a great many ladies would much rather now hold you, sir, in their power as I have you here. Amusingly with your charming talk, delighting themselves, forgetting their cares. But I praise that same Lord who holds up the heavens. I have completely grasped the man everyone longs for through God's grace. Notice the logic of that. Thank the Lord. that I can commit adultery with you. That's essentially what she is saying. Okay? With loveliness, great favor she conferred. What does that mean? She's conferring great favor. It means she is putting on the charm. I mean, she's not holding anything back. The knight responds, we're told, with virtuous speech. Why? What can he know? According to chivalry and courtly love. He can't refuse her. He can't just say, "Be gone, foul strumpet. Get away, you whore." He can't do that. Because if he does, he violates all those codes. So he's got to find a way to reject her without it looking like he's rejecting her. May Mary repay you. She prayed and thanked God, so he's kind of going to meet her and maybe trump her. Why Mary? Virgin! For I have truly made proof of your great generosity and credit for their deeds. But he says, you're paying me too much honor. I don't deserve this. And she goes, oh, you want to swear by Mary? Okay, I'll play your game. By Mary. It seems to me very different. For if I were the worthiest of all women alive and held all the riches of the world in my hand and could bargain and pick a lord for myself, for the virtues I've seen in you, you'd be him. She's saying, metaphorically, my husband. He's not nearly as good as you are. No man on earth would be picked before you. 1275. He says, come on, you've chosen much better. But thank you for the esteem you hold me in, Gravity, he says, your servant, my sovereign, I consider you and declare myself your knight, and may Christ reward you. You're my Lord, you're my mistress, and may Christ reward you. Kind of bring religion back in. Let's keep this chaste. And so what do? They chat like this until late in the morning. Always the lady behaves, and always he acts cautiously and in the most courteous of ways. Though woman he could remember. What's that though mean? But he doesn't really. He wants to act probably beastishly. Okay? Interest in love because the ordeal he must face very soon. To stand a crushing blow. So she bids him goodbye. And says, you're right. You must not be Sir Gawain. Why? He asks. He's suddenly thinking, oh, I violated some law of courtesy. Man, can you imagine how horrible it would be to live in this society? Where you have to keep all these rules, and I keep forgetting to bring you that sheet. I'll email it to you. I think I have it by email. But why? Fearing he had committed some breach of good manners. She said, well, so good a knight as Gawain is rightly reputed, and whom courtesy is so completely embodied, could not easily have spent so much time with a lady without begging a kiss. You could have at least asked, am I so repulsive that you don't even want to kiss me? Be it as you wish. He's Wesley from The Princess Bride, I will kiss at your bidding, but notice what he does. Oh, you want to kiss? Sure. I will kiss at your bidding as befits a knight, and do more rather than displease you. So urge it no further. I will see your kiss and raise it to whatever you want. But don't ask. Why? Courtesy. Courtesy demands. Okay. That he offer himself totally. And so with that, she approaches him, takes him in her arms, stoops graciously over him, and kisses him. And then they commend each other to Christ. She goes out of the room, and he goes takes a long, cold shower. And so what happens? Meanwhile, back in the forest, they kill the deer, and then we get the big, long description of the gutting of the deer. Why? Well, if it's an aristocratic audience, the knights are going, oh yeah, tell us about how you killed the deer and gutted it and slit it from throat to you know what, etc. It's part of their everyday, ordinary life. Okay? So the Lord comes back in. He lays out the venison before Sir Gawain and says, this I have gotten in the forest, this belongs to you. Okay, Sir Gawain, yes. Very good, very good. It's all yours. And Sir Gawain says, okay. Well, by the terms of our they claim it is yours. Sir Gawain says, yep, that's right. Oh! Plants one on the knight. Take here my winnings. Obtain nothing else. Thank God. Because he'd have to share it. The Lord, well, that's excellent. Could you tell me whereby you came this reward? No, that wasn't part of our agreement. So, Sir Gawain receives a deed, and the host receives a kiss. Okay. So the host says, just do it again. Double or nothing, as it were. Sir Gawain says, okay, I'm cool with that. So the next morning, the host goes out hunting. What's he hunt for? Boar. What's the difference between hunting boar and hunting deer? Boar can kill you. Think of this as Bambi. Prancing out in the forest, And what happens? They kill Bambi. Bambi doesn't have tusks that can rip you to shreds. Wild boar, medieval England. We've got, anecdotal evidence that talks about how big they are. Can stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Okay, I'm 5'10", put 2 inches on top of me. 6 feet tall at the shoulder. So how long would this boar be? Sucker's as big as a hole. Tusks, not nice. Okay, men were killed often hunting. So he's out hunting boar. Meanwhile, line 1469, our gracious knight lies in his bed, happily at home, amid bright-colored bedding. Nor did the lady fail to wish her guest good day. Early she was there, mood to mollify. Why is he not in a good mood? I mean, mollify means what? To put him in a good mood. She's there to make him happy, right? So she comes to the curtain, she peeps in. Sir Gawain welcomes her politely at once. She returns her greeting, she sits by his side. And she says, I really can't believe you're Sir Gawain. They haven't even, and he's thinking, oh great, now what did I do? Well, you forgot the lesson that I taught you yesterday. What lesson was that? Kissing. I told you about kissing, to act quickly wherever a glance of favor is seen. What would happen today? Glance of favor is seen, and he plants one on her. He'd be thrown in jail. Okay? Enough of such talk. I would not do that lest I were refused. Well, I couldn't just reach up and kiss you. You might pull back and say no. Mathwa. My faith is what that means. You could not be refused. Okay. Ladies, picture the most gorgeous man you can imagine. And that's Sir Gawain. Okay? Your ideal, whoever that is. And that's Sir Gawain. And he says, well, what if I tried to kiss you and you refused? So that when she says, no, you could not be refused. but that's not what she means. You are so drop dead handsome, any woman on earth would be foolish. No. You are strong enough to force your will if you wish. Oh my. She has, it's just some kind of rape fantasy. If any woman were so ill-mannered to reject you. Ill-mannered, poor behavior. He said, well, what you say is quite true. In other words, you're right. I am stronger than you are. I could take what I want, right? Country, meaning, well, you guys out here in the provinces, you think a little differently than we do down there in Camelot. Because in my country, it's considered ignoble. It's wrong. All right? And so is each gift that is not freely. I'm at your disposal to kiss when it pleases you. You may take one when you like and stop as seems good in a while. It's almost falls back on his bed and goes, okay, here I am. Take me, have me, use me, whatever you want. I'm yours to command. The poor man. Okay. And she bends down over him and gives him a kiss. And long then they discuss love's misery and bliss. Love. Is love supposed to be miserable? I mean, when you fall in love, do you also at the same time go, ew, I'm disgusted. He or she totally repulses me. Please, more. No, no, more. Is this a schizophrenic thing? Okay, yes. A French guy named Denis de Rougemont, Dennis de Rougemont, wrote a book called Love in the Western World. Right? That is all about passionate love. And he argues, essentially following the courtly love tradition, that really, truly passionate love in the Western world is adulterous. And even when it's not adulterous, true passionate love usually, vast majority of times, ends negatively. What? Just take a wild guess. Romeo and Juliet. Lancelot and Guinevere. Result. Okay. There are others too. Paolo and Francesca from the Divine Comedy. Paolo and Francesca. Paolo falls in love with this girl. Unfortunately, she happens to be his brother's wife. They're off making love one day. The brother comes in with a sword in the act. So when they go to hell, which they do, they're forever caught in a whirlwind of because they can never complete their act. All right? We'll come back and finish that on the Tuesday after break.